Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collingwood for YouTube, and I'm here to continue my read-along of the Dark Shadows Daybook, written by Patrick McCray, artwork by Wallace McBride, and this is where I'm at, 668, page 124. When David begins writing stories about men with strange urges and unusual hair, is he a certain age or just possessed by the occult? Ned Stewart, Roger Davis. Ned Stewart arrives at Collingwood seeking information on Chris Jennings, an old acquaintance of whom he is strongly anticipated. David, manipulated by Quentin's song, writes a story of a man who becomes a wolf. He then goes to the mausoleum to open a door that protects Chris. The real phantoms in Dark Shadows are the metaphorical phantom limbs, represented by absent, missing, or neglectful family members. At times, they seem to outnumber the characters who show up, and their influence quietly resonates throughout the series. I wish I could attribute this to the revealing emotional wounds of the author, because it was ongoingly crafted by committee. This is a frustrating impossibility, but it may have an even greater significance considering how many people and perspectives were involved in the production. It may something shared and information about the community behind Dark Shadows. Everything works at the home of Collingwood, except for what they claim to hold dear: family. Victoria is looking for parents. Carolyn is missing a father. David is missing a mother. Barnabas a fiance. And then there are those who try to take the place of those absent or who find themselves cast in those parts. Julia, for instance, neither Josette nor Ben is ultimately Jeremiah. Part of him, anyway, as far as Barnabas is concerned. In 688, episode 688, missing family and surrogate family permits the action there present on both ends. And only at the climax do they threaten to collide. Ned is avenging his sister, a woman robbed from his life by a catatonia resulting from witnessing Chris's transformation. On his part, Chris is an asset to family wherever he goes, if inadvertently, but by turns he is absent, missing and neglectful. He shows up in Collinsport after his twin brother dies, making him a living reminder of missing family. His cousin Joe is on his way out. He's rarely in his sister's life. It may be for her own good, but she has no idea. So between a grieving Ned and a both grieving and grief-infecting Chris, we get David by way of Quentin. One arguably driven by paternal neglect. One driven by a curse ultimately resulting from abandoning a pregnant wife, and by default becoming a neglectful parent. Dark Shadows can be a harsh Victorian noir universe. It doesn't care about what you know and didn't know, or what you meant to do. It cares about what you did, and whatever you do, don't do it to a gypsy. Yeah. The entire strain of the family misery can be traced to a gypsy curse, and that was triggered by a Collins. Quentin, a man whose spirit is now becoming David's father figure. It's the ghost of a man responsible for a son's death. becoming an almost fatherless boy's puppet master and striving to eliminate the last descendant recipient of the curse. His actions initiated Chris Jennings, a man with no idea he's a Collins. The figure of the gypsy spikes briefly on Dark Shadows, but the significance is quietly seismic. Although they cause intense misery for Quentin and others, they do so in defense of family. They represent absolute familiar dedication, and between Patofe and Quentin, they do not like bachelors. They may not have a home, but they have hearts as strong as impenetrable as iron. When it comes to their relatives, not only do they menace the Collins family, they shame them by implication. Compared to the Rakusi tribe, Collinwood is like the Golden Corral of clan cannibalism. It's little but bill and betrayal, and most parents would secretly sell the kids for the right offer. It's classic WASP culture, where family often results for anticipated obligation rather than the earthly drives of passion or good old-fashioned religious guilt. If the writers and crew share anything, it's a well-represented WASP background. Dark Shadows talks about a lot of things, but the fallout from a WASP upbringing is one of them. Even with an Irish name and punctual of religious life, few are as waspy as the Collinses. It's a tart community on an entire swathe of America that's usually taken for granted or not spoken of. Maybe because of the illusion of unequity, unequality, maybe because repression prevents it, and repression and codes of silence are two hallmarks of WASP behavior. The suggestion is that within the bedrock of what we think of as the American aristocracy is a fundamental untrustworthiness. What should you do? What should you be able to trust? Family. What should always be there? Family. Yet in Collinsport, your emotional well-being and for some very life expectancy can be measured in the degrees of separation between you and the founders. Whether they knew it or not, the writers are revealing and perhaps exorcising the demons of a culture that claims to have none. In this case, the secret that keeps getting out is symbolic of the cosmic wasp's culture nightmare. A werewolf, hearsay, the untimely familiar animal existing in packs, lying under the skin, literally a dog, driven by guttural impulses, a creature with late-night stirrings that make brunch impossible, the very symbol of impurity, and you can fill in the blanks of any non-WASP group that may be sparking today's round of Protestant paranoia. No matter how long since they've moved into Collinwood, that family may never run out of things to unpack. Episode 689. Does the arrival of an old flame's brother mean that an assassin has come to Collinwood? Chris Jennings has until the full moon to find out. Chris, Don Briscoe. After Barnabas catches David trying to get into the secret room, where Chris has transformed, Maggie notes that David personality is changing for the worse. Chris discovers that Ned Stewart is looking for him and explains that Ned's sister was once Chris's girlfriend until the sight of his transformation drove her to catatonia. He suspects that Ned may have tried to poison him. Later, David resists Quentin's nefarious wishes and repaid with excruciating pain by the ghost. The only secret about the secret room in the Collins Mausoleum is why. They don't just put up a neon sign and revolving door. If every character on the show who knew about the Forbidden Chamber went in there at once, it would look like the stage room scene in A Night at the Opera, which is just the way that Roger Collins likes it. For a section of the series that doesn't have a lot going on, episode 689 is packed with great stuff and is a fine example of the show firing on all cylinders. As it nears its apex with 1897, could they be cutting to the chase to Victorina faster? Sure. But why spoil the ride? It may have the blood and thunder of Maggie's kidnapping or the urban menace of Nicholas Blair, but this section of the series feels like the core of the show. Barnabas doing his part to protect the family and extended family from the mysteries of the unknown. The two highlights of the episode are character-oriented. First, it takes the time to have Maggie come to terms with the fact that, for better or maybe worse, she's no Victoria Winters. Catherine Lee Scott handles the deliberation with contemplative depth. It's nice to see the program not just sweep the swap under the rug. I assumed that she was working as a diner waitress because there was simply a lack of work in Collinsport for the liberal arts trained woman. No wonder she first thought Vicky was a jerk. She took her gig in 1966. I also prefer Maggie because she conveys intelligence. Mulkey was all about innocence. Maggie is about the guts and gall. The other bright spot is given to Don Briscoe, a great monologue about Sabrina, and that crazy time she had a nervous breakdown during his transformation. This is not an example of the show just poking around and stretching things out. This genuinely enhances the character and our respect for the actor. Briscoe maintains his sense of ooh while finding every bit of variety within that, and does so with truth, conviction, and subtlety. Speaking of which, no one does hand foo like David Selby. His gestures and poses but Mandrake to shame as he wields them to torture David. I have no doubt that this is authentically what tormenting ghost hands look like. One day in 1969, Broadway superstar composer Jerry Herman opened his first real flop, Dear World. However, artistically, it was a rousing success. Various songs, prestige styles that will define the medium, ranging from soundism to, unfortunately, Lloyd Webber. However, it is with Kiss Her Now that Herman delivers as only he can. The show lasted less than 150 performances. Episode 694. Professor Stokes finds himself at a stalemate with the evil specter of Quentin Collins. But will David pay the ultimate price? Quentin Collins, David Selby. Having failed in his exorcism, Stokes asks for the time to regroup. Meanwhile, David assaulted with physical brutality by Quentin, retreats to the old house, refusing to return. A skeptical Roger investigates Collinwood, only to suffer a similar attack, leading him to evacuate the house, with his sister vowing to return. Quentin's ghost, now alone, holds immutative domain over the great estate. Dark Shadows is replete with "I can't believe they just did that" on daytime television moments. But this one may top them all. These moments aren't shocking in a topless way. No blood, just a Hendrik Emism wrote, "People just don't do such things." TV shows, but especially soaps, are vicarious homes. They are often for the lonely. The characters become family. The limited stage sets become extensions of the living room, especially now in the age of 65 norm. And yes, we expect to see these new beloved family members punished or on a regular basis. But Roger and David have something more profoundly disturbing happening to them. They both receive Quentin's mostly off-camera wrath. They both earn the badge of 1,000-yard stare. David Hennessy always sells it, and Lewis Edmonds really outdoes himself as Barnabas finds him after his attack. He goes from catatonic to quietly terrified to profoundly disturbed to despondent to quaking with vengeance, all in this space from the drawing room to the front door. This is a man who's dealt with Devlin's worst. We've seen him in jittery and agitated, but never numb. Now, with Roger shell-shocked, we see just how powerful Quentin is, and we wonder how long Quentin waited to render Edward's grandson to such a state. Either way, Quentin finally emerges as the sole heir of his grandmother's fortune, the prize that brought him back to Collinwood for the first time, back to face Jenny and fate and the bricked-up wall that was once the door to his room. It was the trap that cost him Jameson and brought out petulance so vulgar that he would spend the next 70 years recuperating. He was compelled to reach out to his doubled descendant and love him and punish him, and attempt to euthanize him great-grandson while he was at it. Just imagine what Gregory Trascos may still have in store from the very same room. The most shocking element of this episode it is its apocalyptic nature. These sets are second homes, and to see them hopelessly abandoned by the characters, it's a revealing moment. It brings our attachment to Collinwood to the surface, a bit like the emotion felt when seeing the Enterprise destroyed or the 4077 decommissioned. We see that Quentin has and what we've lost as the camera lovingly glides through Cy Thomas's haunted mansion to the roaring giant on the landing. Quentin is another viewer of Dark Shadows, in a way, but a cruel one. We want to join the Collinses to him. They saw the knockoffs. It's Quentin's home. They were just squatting there. This episode was broadcast on a Friday. Few weekends must have felt longer to Dark Shadows fans. Caution, ignore the voices at Widow's Hill. They lack credibility and will lead astray. Maine, Collinsport Historical Society, www.collinsporthistoricalsociety.com. Guys, check that out. Check it out. I'm going to try to leave 2 links in the description box. Yeah, Mission 1897. Guys, check out this artwork. This is what I showed off before when I did my unboxing. Check that out. How nice is that? There's David Selby, Count Batofe, Barnabas, Rachel Drummond. There's Madka. You can see Madka. There's Angelique. Oh my gosh. Check out that artwork. I hope you guys can see that. Check that out. That is awesome. Mission 1897. A trance sends Barnabas back to 1897, where he discovers why Quentin became a spirit of vengeance. Episode 700. Led only by the mysterious forces of Chinese black magic, can Barnabas Collins save the life of David through a terrifying voyage beyond the limits of inner space? Barnabas, Jonathan Fred. After finding Quentin's bedchambers and his I Ching wands, Barnabas soon discovers that Maggie's rescue attempt for David has left the boy in Quentin's sadistic-induced coma. The wands send Barnabas into a trance that reveals his coffin beyond a heavy door. When shows get successful enough, they get their own spin-offs. Only Dark Shadows became its own, or is it a reboot? 1897 manages to take the best of everything that had came before, repackaged it, and make it feel even fresher than ever. Did you like 1795? Cool. Let's make 1897. Capitalizing on the West. Sorry. Yeah. Make sure I got that right. The Western craze. It's essentially the wild, wild Northeast. Like Vicky time traveling, wait until we make it Barnabas. And did you like Barnabas? Put a drink in his hand and swap cups for reproaches, and you'll love Quentin. That's true. You could write a month's worth of articles on the perils, and I'm not sure Dan Curtis knew how long the show would be gone, but it had to be less time when they ended up spending away, but we're not there yet. Where we're in 1969. Whether or not Curtis knew that he would be gone for most of the year, he knew this was something special. It's only one thing to know that you're saying goodbye. It's another than to have goodbye sprung upon you. In this case, the characters are abandoned in a manner both methodically and brisk. It propels us into action by tightly focusing the action on Barnabas' powerlessness. He can't stop Maggie from going to Collingwood. He can't stop David's coma. Fortunately, he and Stokes waste no time once they finally discover Quentin's chambers. The entire storyline leading up to 1897 is about building momentum through David and Amy. By having people other than the primary characters make those discoveries first, it allows expositions to be layered upon expositions without making us wonder why nothing is being done. There's only so much David can do outside of constant patricide attempts, but here they find the room. Here Quentin exhibits his cruelty in the most poignant manner, plunging David into a coma just as he reaches Maggie's arm. So much for frustrating adults or ghosts. It almost makes me wonder if the ghost is only apparently out for revenge. What if he actually needs Barnabas to help to save him, and keeps upping the ante until our hero has no choice? When you go back and look at the episode, it has spare populated sense of the apocalyptic. And the modern, it's not just Collinwood that has been abandoned. The abandonment covers the entire show. It seems this is not a universe that feels if it has a canary or blue whale, cannery or a blue whale. Maggie is now the Victoria Winters, and although she bravely goes to search for David completely on her own, she is not up to the task, which is another way of saying that the show is not up to the task of letting its problems be solved by its replacement, first protagonist. It's time to call in the biggest big gun possible and send him on a journey through time. It's also a process that deliberately detaches us from 1969. There is a stark, empty quality to the assignment of characters. Here, Maggie, David, Barnabas, Stokes. The show has been reduced to the point until there's almost nothing to which we are bidding farewell. Several years before David Bowman flew his pod into the monolith, it was a lonely point of departure. Something had driven his computer insane, practically the equivalent of a ghost. The only way he could communicate with the Force was by encountering on its own level. With Frank Duell dead and Hall silenced, Dave had no idea what he was going to confront, only that he was going truly into the unknown. What was that unknown? His own specter, yet one in which he was reborn. I can't say precisely what the authors were influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey. I can't say precisely that the authors were influenced by the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, but perhaps they were. Certainly, Dark Shadows is about to take its audience on the ultimate trip. Episode 701. In 1897, unwitting gypsies react to the return of Quentin Collins by unleashing a living death from beyond the grave. Quentin, David Selby. Quentin arrives back at Collinwood despite having soon domestic chops there with his exit. His dying grandmother welcomes him cautiously, but warns that his brother Edward will inherit the secret of the Collins family. Meanwhile, desperate gypsies raid Barnabas's casket in search of jewels, but find Barnabas inhabited by his soul from 1969, more than ready to greet them. Some transitions feel right. Julia encountering Ben Stokes in hideous age makeup in 1940, not right. Vicky encountering a wide-eyed Barnabas at the old house lawn in 1795, right. 1897, right behind, right, like a smoking jacket tailored by St. George W. Trupon himself and delivered by a Greek god. It's a transition that's warm and fond of the actors and its audience, and the show that is to come. It lets us know that although David's life hangs in the balance, that's 75 years or so in the future. So swing, baby. Unlike the DS of old, which often trickled onto screens with the urgency of frozen sap, this moves so quickly that it unleashes Barnabas by episode's end. Up to a certain point, Dark Shadows asked anxiously audience members, "What's the rush?" DS 1897 has too much story to tell for that. It's a soap with confidence. To do more than string us along between Ronco aids and slides with refreshing effortlessness from one timeline to another. And it helps that we've already been introduced to Magda, Quentin, and Beth. That's true. Magda's mentioned by name before they go back to time. Then we see the ghost of Quentin and Beth. When Barnabas departs 1969, He is flanked by Julianne Stokes. Friends, they are the last faces we see from 1969. Magda and Xandor, Grayson Hall and Thayer David are the first we find in 1897. Barnabas, Necropod, I will land among friends instantly. We know them to be on our side, sleazy, opportunistic, but warm, affectionate, and canny. Smarter than Willie, less cruel than Jason McGuire, yet every bit his match, and refreshingly non-Angelo. Yes, a mess of vices, but as ethnic others, they are courageous and aware individuals. They are destined to be wise allies and formidable enemies. This is important in the curse slinger department. If remorse doesn't follow, the audience learns nothing. The show lacks pugnance and storylines. And when the villains meet justice or death, we have no way of knowing that Magda will deliver Quentin's destiny, but it will make nuanced sense when she does. Quentin's entrance, Saint's painting, begins as nearly shot-for-shot remake of Barnabas's first trip to Collinwood, 67. That introduction told us to expect mystery. Now, this introduction tells us to expect our new protagonist. He wastes no time in speaking, telling Beth, pre-united, that she is still beautiful. It's a line of swagger, charm, sincerity, and other bunk. In other words, Quentin without his voice. We only knew part of the picture. He was a ghost doing a dedicated impression of Edward Stern and Severe. We know that edge, we know the potential. The brothers share it. Even if we don't know one of them, now we see the justifiably held charm, and which it is Bond. Has any character been so bold on Dark Shadows? Nathan Forbes, your ship is casting off. There is a new scoundrel in town, one we knew all have powers vast and true. And we see exactly why Matriarch Edith lets him back. He's fun, a presence we've never seen among the Collins clan. Think back, Jeremiah Little, Carolyn, if you're named Buzz, but that's it. This immediately sets him apart. If he's unhappy, we know he'll deal with it with wit, irony, and edge. He is the modernist answer to the romantic assertion of Barnabas. We already know that he'll find no equal at Collinwood and be introducing that edge. Dark Shadows grows up. Take him going back 75 years. Took him going back 75 years. But it's high time and to remind us that some things never change in a universe that seems to thrive on instability. Barnabas enters in the traditional way with a mouth-breathing, hayseed looking for his family jewels. Xander should be as lucky as Willie, but with Thayer David in the role, we see a connection between Willie and Ben, if only in spirit. Barnabas will soon learn that you have to go places you never expect to finally make it home. Episode 706. Trapped in 1897 via a Chinese trance, Barnabas can't decide what's worse, being outed by a Seno matriarch or held at gunpoint by someone with a sense of humor. Barnabas, Jonathan Frid. Barnabas learns that Edith knows his identity as a vampire. The true family secret could get out at any moment, as she mutters the word mausoleum to all within close earshot. He orders the mausoleum cleared before meeting Edward, Judith, and Quentin's brother Carl. The new Collins holds Barnabas at gunpoint with a trick pistol that ejects a flag that says Fib. He insists that they'll be great friends. Soon Edith dies, while Edward swears to find out the secret anyway. Larry David fans, take note. Dark Shadows is a prequel to Seinfeld. Seinfeld gone wrong. That's all I can think of when I watch 706. I had a friend who contended that you couldn't understand Seinfeld if you weren't from New York. Guess where she lived? Of course she was wrong. To understand Seinfeld means to be one of two types of people. The geographic is irrelevant. There are those who enforce the abruptly rules of society, and there are those who, just to maintain sanity, have to bend, bob, and weave around those rules just to get through the day. The rest of society sees us as villains and weasels. In truth, we're just getting by as the loyal resistance. Barnabas is one of us. In fact, most of the more interesting characters on Dark Shadows are we can't all be Edward Collins as easy as his life of constant and furious umbrage would be. Here we have Barnabas on a mission to save a life. As noble as it gets, and yet from day one in 1897, he leads as the title of my autobiography will read, A Life Under Siege. Rarely as he would had a worse day than this one, and it gives him the chance to display his greatest power ever, restraint. He shows up by not choking the living Sasha out of Carl, Edward, and Magnet. Yes, Angelique, Nicholas, and Adam tried his metal and soul to the ectoplasmic marrow. These are major essential crises compared to his unbroken chain of stubborn situational toes in 706. I mean, you show up, this matriarch goes nuts because of course she knows your secret, like the third person you meet in all of Maine, and she knows your secret. Fortunately, she's oatmeal north of the eyebrows, except for blurting out mausoleum for all the world to hear. Great! You go deal with Magnet. Simple request. Move a coffin a half a mile or so. Little to ask in exchange for free rent, of course. She's a jerk, but you don't have the time to bite her. You only sit down, and there is a gun to your head, wielded by some greasy dweeb in brown velvet who looks like Willie. But it's all a gag. At this point, is any of it worth it? Yes, Barnabas would have survived the gunshot, but who's going to get his undead brains off the carpet? I mean, before Edward minces downstairs. And what if Carl misses and puts a hole in Barnabas's only suit? Guys, I'm sorry, but we don't have time for this. I mean, really, Angelique didn't get Barnabas to lose it, but this chain of inconveniences and imbeciles is enough to drive anyone over the edge. It's like he's landed in an Claudius episode in the Caligula arc. The interaction with Carl may be my favorite Frid moment in his hundreds of episodes. In real life, he's an actor under unfathomable stress, concerned by psychotic conjured by psychotic nymphomaniac fans, all genders at every turn. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Opening the mail is an adventure. Gravestone, cookies, passionately unwanted nudes. But he's a Canadian aristocrat with an upper lip so stiff you could cut linoleum on it. Linoleum on it. He can hold it together. Frid was clearly channeling his fragmenting politeness in how he indulged Carl. From beat to beat, his face is an encyclopedia of what the fuck WTF moments it is. Yeah. The culmination is when Carl needs to go, and Frid, Barnabas, tells him, Don't tell me, stop you with a deadpan delivery that makes Stephen Wright look like Jerry Lewis. Our hero suffers in Seinfeldian silence, with no Julia, nor Willie, nor Stokes to whom he can convey. Only on a day like this could the death of the Collins matriarch signal happy ending for B. Collins, Esquire. Episode 771. What's beautifully brilliant, blonde, and set on satanic revenge. Quentin Collins meet your new girlfriend, Angelique, Laura Parker. Quentin and Evan accidentally summon Angelique. After determining that she has landed in Collinsport, Angelique finds that Barnabas is back in the arms of an aviator of Josette. She rolls up her sleeves and gets to work on the brutal revenge for both of them. We are 10 episodes into 1897, and if you were not familiar with the series, you would swear I was making it up. Nothing prior can really prepare us for what just happened. It represents more than an arc of television. It represents a philosophy. And it may be fan service, objections to which I do not understand, nor have. I have ever, from where I am standing, which is narrow and damp and smells of Woodford Brimley on a moonlit night in May, fan service is just stuff someone doesn't like, and a thing that they usually do. An ample supply daring to please someone, thus triggering the following thought. Somewhere, someone is having a good time, and I'll put a stop to that. Dark Shadows has just run through 10 days of the best fan service in horror, which is saying something. Okay, what's on the scoreboard? Barnabas equals vampire, time travel, gypsies, a dead matriarch, and a ghost. A child recruited to rob a coffin. A Satanist attorney with a pointy beard. A tall blonde John Carlin shrieking with laughter and blasting away days with a fib flag. Swords-wielding Quentin speaks. Kids induced into evil ceremonies. Oh yeah, Josette is back, as is the music box, and Barnabas picks up like the past 100 years in 1960s. And 1960s fever dream never happened. Lewis Edmonds, a little more Lewis Edmonds. Joan Bennett, even more imperious because she lacks the means to be. It's more of everything you like, and healthy dollop of stuff you now realize you were cruelly denied. I'm certain that someone out there can't stand it, but let us reveal in the philosophy that makes possible their umbrage and our Elon. Specifically, the saucy pecker to profar, that art exists to delight. Even as it challenges, this is Dark Shadows gone mad with generosity. Not quite pushing the envelope as such as stuffing it full of things we love. If it is about mystery, that's secondary. The main mission is to thank audiences for tuning in. And today, the notes are to complete because Dark Shadows was missing only one thing, to become the ultimate echo chamber of itself. Today, it got it. There is a perfection to Angelique wandering into the frame. It assures us that the writers are raw confident of what they have. They disguise no qualms about sharing it. Quentin is immediately smitten with her, as is the audience. They are not wasting any time with her jumping through hoops of pretense in a black wig. She's here. She's choking Evan Hanley like a Sith badass, and she sizes up Quentin with more potential energy than Pavardo on the high dive. Her mission is to get Barnabas, and the window peeping recon work begins. She's like an erotically charged Gladys Krivitz. There he is with Josette again. She arrived just in time to straighten out the unheavenly hash of that no-good two-timing himbathic husband of hers, running around with the reincarnated spirit of his dead fiancée again. Mere hours after he's out of the coffin, she cannot let him out of her sight for a mere century, and he's back at it again. The louse. That's funny. She rarely holds a grudge. But do you blame her? You can't make any omelet without breaking eggs. And at the rate she went in 1795, she broke enough to open an IHOP. She didn't just pop out of her hammock one day in Martinique and decide that she was tired of kicking around the island, so she might as well disguise herself as a domestic, go back breaking labor for an hour or two, then kill almost everyone in a small Maine coastal village. You know, if she could have accomplished her ends without all that bloodshed, I suspect she would have done so. The poor demoness is not corporal for 15 minutes before she sees that all of her work was for naught. Barnabas is back in the arms of that mortal, but it hasn't gone so far that a good doll straight line won't help. Strangling won't help. It's kind of hard not to cheer her on quietly. There's a payoff, too. I'm not sure that we can sense it's coming, but bringing her back without the punchline would be, well, fan service. 1897 is about transformation, a European society becoming an American one. One century becoming another. Quentin is not just becoming a werewolf, but becoming a man of the saddest maturity. Barnabas finally mastering the game he was dealt into a century earlier, and Angelique, this is her great mattering as well. Going from declaring Barnabas a mutual enemy with Quentin to saving his life, turning him human, and aiding his fight with Laura. Not cleanly, not without ambiguity, but with a firmness that will carry her well into 1970 and backwards to 1940, unless it's the other way around. Quentin only meets her once before he dubs her a beautiful, black-hearted child of the angels, a contradictory description more apt than any other, with her landing The show finally and truly gives itself permission to become Dark Shadows. Whether it's Liz transforming from murderess to mother, or Vicky finally understanding Dark Shadows about transformation more than anything else. After all, what is a shadow but the transformation of light into darkness and back again? And at this very moment, the show itself transforms 69 years before the first episode ever begins. Episode 724. Barnabas must recall the secrets of voodoo wisdom to cure Quentin of Angelique's zombie spell. But will a renegade gypsy do more harm than he helps? Xandor, Thayer David. Zombie Quentin kidnaps Rachel Drummond, but a consensuous Xandor tussles with him in the graveyard, and she escapes, trapping the mutton chopped automation in the old house. Barnabas conducts a voodoo ceremony that should fuse Quentin's body and spirit. When the body staggers away, our heroes have no idea that it has fallen in the graveyard and can't get up. Dark Shadows opens the cork on 1897 with insignificance, and the wine has breathed to perfection. This is the show's new home, and there's something about this world that feels like Dark Shadows. But even more so, if Roger is stiff, Edward is stiffer. If the streamlined contours of 60s fashion seem severe, Victorian clothing makes them look dumpy. And if the 60s caught fudged with fright, the great-grandparents practically defined cutting a supernatural rug 7 decades before. 724 is a tight adventure with no real subplot. It's exactly what can fill an episode, and yet another Mondu day in life slice for our long-suffering hero. We are still in the general spring break time of the year. And what a thrill for kids, Zombie Quentin kidnaps governess. No wonder the record and Viewmaster set were in the offering. If you make a show with these elements, the Genevieve Convention requires you to make a Viewmaster reels and a spoken word album. This was 1969, the show's zenith and the time when Dark Shadows mania was unmatchable. If there is a watch word for the overall feel of 1897, it's decadence. The sets and costumes spring to mind, but so do the performances, broad and freewheeling when not intentionally arc. The possibilities of the story are decadent. We're contending with a zombie in this one. Even the horror is what appears to be the empty plot of Laura Stockbridge. So says the stone in graveyards, those smoke wafts into the gypsified old house, giving it an appropriately Sergio-like atmos. Further still, the bloopers have appropriately lushness. Xandor and Magda begin the day by fighting over cold soup like a couple in an audit's play, and Xandor attempts to defend his dignity with said soup trickling from his outrageous mustache. In the words of William Blake, the road of access leads to the place of wisdom. The palace of wisdom, And there is wisdom to be had in that mustache. Not only are these actors having the most fun they'd ever have on the show, but the characters of Magda and Xandor are also the most relatable, reminiscent of an Eastern European West and Fields. How close do you think Xandor and Magda are to Sam Hall and Grayson? This is one of the many great 1897 episodes written by Sam Hall, and there is a sting of reality to the language and a twinkle in his wife's eye that makes me think it's an emphasized transcript of whatever was happening the night before. It's like the Roma touring production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, except there's a dead reanimated Quentin, rather than a dead imaginary son. I'll be damned. They also provide an entirely different world to which we can compare, and reveal Barnabas. He's an entitled aristocrat at his funniest when forced to fence with words, enduring those who, under other circumstances, he'd just as soon strangle. If he thought that Loomis and Hoffman tried to class privilege, they were the Alan Napier Alfred compared to the Rakosis. As much as Barnabas just barely puts up with them in true sitcom style, he still mixes the exotic with the mundane. We think of him as so bland when recalling the polished innocence of his first meeting Vicky in 1795. Hogwash. Barnabas is a hard-loving scoundrel who was bed-hopping twixt in classes in the islands when not attending voodoo ceremonies. As we learn here, no wonder Angelique loved him. Did I mention decadence? On this day in 1969, we sent the Mariner 7 probe to Mars. It found no life. Officially, anyway. Okay, guys. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to be starting episode 749 when I pick back up later today. I will see you guys later. Guys, there's going to be a link in the description box to the Dark Shadows Daybook, and I'm going to try to leave a link in the description box for the Collinsport Historical Society. Book is written by Patrick McCray, artwork by Wallace McBride. Guys, go pick up this book. It is amazing. I'm having a blast reading it. I'll see you guys later.